Hello again. We are still in Module 1, and we are looking at Part 2, continuing our conversation about the role of the healthcare manager in a crisis. This time, we're going to look at what we call a job action sheet. It's planning for the unknown potential disaster that begins with an assessment of what you might be needing. So first, take a look at it. What are you going to do? When are you going to do it? To whom you report after you have done it. And this also takes a look at planning and assessing the organizational capabilities, what supplies you might need to procure, what kind of training might need to happen or should have happened, and then afterwards evaluating and improving what you've done. So when you think about the role of a healthcare manager, there's a lot of different possibilities. You might not be planning for bringing victims to wherever you are, or that you have residents that you need to address, but instead you might be planning to evacuate. You may be part of that team that specifically looks at what happens if you need to evacuate. Now, I live in Florida, and that's not an uncommon occurrence given that so many of our healthcare facilities, nursing homes, care centers are all located within beach areas, beach communities, and near water. And the minute we have a hurricane that produces floodwaters, we're often looking at some of these low-lying areas to evacuate. The other possibility is that you might be part of a group that's looking at what do we do for our special needs populations. This can also be people that are living in assisted care facilities who may have no electricity during a storm. It could be those individuals that are homeless, those that are orphans, you name it. So there's a lot of different kinds of special need populations that we'll consider. And we're also going to take a much more significant look at our vulnerable populations in a later lecture. So if you need to evacuate, here's a little chart done by the Department of Health at the state of Minnesota, your own home state. And you can look and see by starting the shaded boxes, those are the unit level decisions. The clear boxes are the incident command level decisions. So for example, your emergency is identified, your initial size up is complete. Yes. Is it a life threat? No. Then your incident commander can assess the situation and determine if there are any potential life threats over the expected duration of the event. Or if it is, and if it's an imminent threat, you again continue down the left-hand side. So take a look at this at your leisure. You can also see that you might be able to shelter in place, as we've talked about, or you might need to evacuate. And then you look through those 9 steps to see what you might have to accomplish over the course of this incident or disaster. And there's always more. You might need to have extra labor on hand. Think about the pandemic and what we first experienced in New York City, where they were making a call out across the country for additional nurses, physicians. They were lifting credentialing, licensing requirements of retired nurses and physicians so that they could come in and provide aid. You might need people to do additional registration. And also handling the volunteer staff, because there's often a group of people that help with nothing more than logistics or keeping patients' families comfortable during the time of a crisis. Further, you've got logistics of critical supplies. Do you have enough medications on board? Other types of medical supplies. Do you have enough food? Do you have enough linens to take care of significant accident victims, for example? Water is always a critical component, and other kinds of equipment. Communications, we're going to get way into a lot of detail because that's an important aspect of crises, and we'll be doing that in a later module. And then transportation. How do you move the staff and the patients and the equipment to and from other facilities in case you're part of a multi-organizational group? And then how do you move staff during bad weather and those critical supplies? I remember once being in a significant blizzard in upstate New York when I worked at Strong Memorial. And I lived 9 miles from the campus, but nobody could drive the road, so I cross-country skied in. Those were the days. Neither sleet or snow will keep us away from doing what we need to do. And there was also a horrific ice storm that also made movement on any blacktop roads and concrete roads very dangerous. So your job action sheet, pod staging manager, here is a sample. So the mission of this role is to coordinate and oversee the operations of the staff staging area, including various activities such as staff and volunteer assignment to positions and the pods, credentialing, training, deployment. So this person provides guidance and serves as a resource for all staff within the group. This is just one sample of many different kinds of jobs that should be in your disaster action kit. that hopefully your organization has assembled over the years and keeps improving upon after each incident. So what might be your initial actions based on this job action sheet? Well, first of all, you better sign in so we know you're there. And you report to and receive assignment from a supervisor, because there are always people that around 24/7 that are constantly making sure that everything's in place that needs to be in place. Wear your picture ID badge, and if they indicate that you need to be wearing a special kind of vest, wear that as well. Read your entire job action sheet, because that may change with each shift you come in and report. Introduce yourself to all the assigned team members. You may not know everybody, again, because we're often called in at different times to do these roles than we normally may be working. And alert the supervisor if you're unable to perform any of the assigned tasks, because there are occasions where, due to a recent injury or something, that you might not be able to pick up boxes like you had planned to, whatever the task might be. And then make sure you are familiar with the workstation where you're working, the types of supplies that are already present there, and whether you might need some other supplies. And then you establish and maintain a job action log that covers chronologically what you accomplished during your shift, because they may need to refer back to that as well. And then you'll get message forms that will have instructions off and on. If email is up and running, great. Texting may be up and running, whatever that format is to get messages back and forth quickly during a crisis. So specific job actions. So you will have, there will be an area command that will have your operations chief, the logistics and safety chief, and they'll be communicating what the objectives are perhaps during your work shift or during that day, and any strategies based on what materials are available or not available. You'll be coordinating with pod area manager to supply any needed information via that chain of command. You'll field logistical requests from that command team, and you may be at a multi-agency command post at the staging area, and you will liaise with other agencies. I often think to my time at the county where I was part of the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, where we had everybody, police, schools, pharmacies, shelters, home health agencies, you name it. We were fire department, we were all there as points of contact for our various types of organizations. And so that's considered a multi-agency command post. You will provide regular reporting, and you will make certain that if there's needed change to the protocol or procedures based on what you're learning as of that instant, that you're authorized to do that, and you will. You may be acting as the point person, and then you've got to make sure that you're complying with everything that has been predefined and the logistics procedures that you have in place in your organization that hopefully you learned during your course of your training. And you will want to make sure that requests from the staff are filled timely. So at the end of your work shift, you'll complete all your required forms, reports, and other documents. You'll sign out indicating the hours that you worked. You'll clean up your work area, and absolutely always leave a phone number in case you need to be reached, as long as we have phone service. Sometimes we go to satellite communications, again, just depending on the nature of the crisis. And you will brief the oncoming staff at the shift change. So another thing to consider, and I'm just throwing in a slide or two to kind of give you an idea about it, because based on the type of organization you're part of, you may be under different compliance. So what regulations, safety measures, insurance, and accreditation relate to crisis management? So think about Joint Commission NFPA 99 requiring an all hazards incident command structure that can coordinate with the command system in your community, use the same terminology as the community, flexible enough to allow activation and deactivation based on what's happening, and is very clear about how you handle patients, staff, families, logistics of supplies, media, and security. So again, I put up the Joint Commission. You just need to know what your organization needs to be responsible to in terms of state regulations, federal regulations, etc., and laws, of course. So yes, laws and regulations. So during the disasters, it's also important to be familiar with state laws and regulations which address Good Samaritan, which means if you come on an accident victim and you're not a doctor or a nurse, or even if you are, you do your best to take care of that person and they can't sue you. Licensure and reciprocity, as I mentioned earlier in New York City during the pandemic, they were very open about if you had a license, come in and work. We're not going to question it. We need all hands on deck. Liability, what emergency powers might be able to be granted where you are. Any particular health declarations, like the water is unsafe to drink, so you need to be boiling water. And any county should be ordinance on EMC service provisions. So As we end Module 1, hope you have found both of these slide sets and the assignments helpful and interesting. Make sure you've introduced yourself in our discussion board, and any questions you have about the course, the syllabus, please use that section called Course Q&A. And hopefully you now know how to define a crisis, a disaster, and potential roles as a healthcare manager in a crisis. So make sure to do your assignments, pick your topic area for the course project, and also do your written assignment. And please peruse the recommended resources in the section entitled Listening, Reading, Watching. We've tried to give you a variety of tools for those of you particularly who want to learn more about different aspects of what we're going to learn in these course modules. But also we have some required readings. So enjoy, and I look forward to talking to you next week.